Welcome to Three Witches and a Druid podcast, a Canadian podcast about paganism in today's modern society.
Chaliach ve bricoro, chaliach hen bricoro, chaliach lich bricoro, chaliach vero bricoro. At the high point of Mull she sits gazing out o'er the sea as her goats graze for milking. The waters froth white with the wind from the north, and she bares her red teeth to the gale. Her cheeks are struck blue like the frigid North Sea, and her hair falls in one shock of white. But her eye is as sharp as a knife at the throat, and as swift as the seafaring mackerel. The tempest is calm, and the old Cailleach has appointed the wind to arise, and the great Queen of Winter is washing her plaid in the high waters at Corryvreckan. She guides on the land, and her footfalls resound through the hills and the lochs of the Highlands. She gathers the cloth of all Scotland, her home, her fiefdom, her own true creation. The tempest is calm, and the old Cailleach has appointed the wind to arise, and the great Queen of Winter is washing her plaid in the high waters at Corryvreckan. And the fishermen pull all their nets from the sea, and the sailors bring ships into harbour, and the crofters have cut down the last sheaves of coal, and the mothers are packing the larder. And the Cailleach, she washes her plaid in the sea, and the sea water boils for 3 days. And she casts out her blanket over Scotland's high peaks, and the plaid is full white and unbroken. The hills are as white as the milk from her goats, and the snow veils the land till the springtime. And the Cailleach has come to reclaim her domain, and the mountains bow down at her coming. The tempest is calm, and the old Cailleach has appointed the wind to arise, and the great Queen of Winter is washing her plaid in the high waters at Corryvreckan. And the great Queen of Winter is washing her plaid in the high waters at Corryvreckan.
Hello, everybody. We are Three Witches and a Druid,
where we sit around the coffee table or the kitchen table or the hot tub with some coffee or tea, or tonight some nice cider, and talk about being a pagan in the modern day. And I am Maeve.
Gwen,
And I'm Brian. We have a guest tonight, Adrianna. And tonight's topic is we're going to discuss accessibility in the pagan community. We thought we'd talk about accessibility in ritual, but I figured we could kind of just talk about, in general, accessibility. So, fortunately, Margot is not here with us for this episode. She'll be here next episode. Because we kind of had hoped to hold off, but she's running late. Mm-hmm. And poor Adrianna needs to go to bed. And we can't hold her up all night. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Adrianna?
What do you want to know?
Yeah, and your journey to paganism even. That's always a nice start. When did you know?
I was 14, I think. It kind of started with being like, I don't want to be Christian, because most families are that I knew, and mine was. And that went down a whole rabbit hole of about 12 different other things, investigating, researching before I settled on what I wanted. So it's actually a rather long story.
Right. And I guess for people listening, where did you grow up? Big city, small town?
I grew up in Cape Breton.
Very many pagans there when you were just starting out? Did you have any mentors?
No, not really.
Was it books? How did you find your way?
A lot of online and books and whatever I could get my hands on my own.
Right. Yeah. When did you move here to the city? Halifax. When did you move to
city.
When did you move to Little Halifax? How long ago?
9 years. I'm just doing the math in my head. 9 years ago.
Right. And has it been any easier to be pagan in Halifax for you?
It definitely is. There are a lot more people around that share similar interests, and the bus systems and things are more accessible, so it's easier for me to actually get out and go meet people and do things. Whereas even to this day, and it's almost 2023 here, the bus system in Cape Breton is not wheelchair accessible.
Oh my goodness.
That's no good.
Yeah. That's crazy. So that's improved things, at least having a decent transit system, right? Something that you can work with. How about the community? How have you found it? How welcoming, I guess, is the word. How accessible is the community for somebody with mobility issues?
Well, it hasn't been too bad. People are rather accepting and accommodating as much as possible. I do find getting to certain types of rituals to be difficult if they're in the middle of the woods or require certain types of dances that I can't do. But for the most part, the community is welcoming and accepting and tries to accommodate.
That's lovely to hear. What kind of things, having had this experience, what kind of things can you suggest to people that are organizing events, whether it's rituals or meetups or anything? What kind of things would make your life easier?
Well, the main thing with ritual is where a lot of them are out in the woods, they're really gravelly or just dirt paths that the chair can't really go over very well. Finding locations that can still be outside, but not quite so rocky of terrain is a better thing to get the chair through it to be able to go.
Yeah.
So a more open field kind of idea is a little easier than off through the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywhere where it's too rocky, the chair has issues. It doesn't really work. And the other thing would be, whereas certain types of rituals pertain with certain kinds of dances that can be done, if accommodations can be made to change them or exclude those kinds of things to allow for me to be able to take part.
Yeah.
That's a major thing. It's not really very fun or comfortable when everybody's dancing around in a certain particular way, where I'm kind of sitting in the background going, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Now, I hope this doesn't sound indelicate. When you're talking about dances, I know I've been at other festivals and whatnot where there have been people who've had some mobility issues, and they went in the middle. So they weren't on the outside. The people may have been dancing around them, but they were still getting all the energy from the dance in the middle, like more in the middle of the circle. Is that something you've ever tried?
That hasn't been given to me as an option up till now, but I also haven't been attending as many rituals lately because aside from the physical issues, I've got some mental health issues going on.
Oh, I understand. Next time you go and there's a dance, go in the middle, because then you'll get all the wonderful energy from everyone being around you. You might find that enjoyable. If there is going to be a dance, it's really,
That sounds like a good idea, actually.
that works out really good.
So as ritual organizer, the Grove had held a ritual maybe last summer, maybe the summer before. COVID makes time all go wibbly wobbly. Where I knew Adrianna was attending. And I tried to keep in mind, as an able-bodied person, what your limitations would be. And so I tried to find a location that was open, was flat, was accessible. But when you arrived, I realized still the amount of flaws in my grand plan. Because as you arrived, I realized, man, we're really uphill. That's a lot of work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then even our ritual location was up another hill where you, as an individual, were required, like, I don't know if you required assistance. We offered assistance for you to get up the hill. But ideally, our ritual would have been in a location where you wouldn't have required assistance. I assume that's sort of the more desirable outcome, correct?
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, you certainly did try, and it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Of course, though, it could have been much, much worse. But even like with my planning and thought, I realized how much more aware I needed to be as an organizer to others around me. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, that does. I'm going to think about that myself and
Yeah.
make sure, because sometimes, people have come in the middle of the circle. Sometimes people who can't get around right have just sat outside, and I haven't said, oh, come in. But some of them have come in. Like, they'll go, okay, I'm going in the middle, but I will make sure next time. No, you want to come in? Feel free.
It's interesting that you bring up that accessibility isn't only for a physical sense. It also applies in a mental sense. Because while we're open to others joining, often a barrier for a lot of individuals is their own, an introvert, where you're trying to have someone who's maybe very introverted join in and make them feel welcome and comfortable and not pressured into participating in a way that makes them uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, Adrianna, do you feel comfortable? And I guess it's not always advertised. So in an open ritual, to ask if you see something, you go, oh, that might be nice. Do you send somebody a private message and say, can I come? Is there any point to me coming? Do you have options for accessibility? Do you feel comfortable reaching out and asking?
I think mostly because the main person I would reach out to would be you or to Brian. So I've become rather comfortable with either of you. But depending on who is putting it on, if I don't know them very well, I tend to just not and skip it.
That's my fear, because although I feel really great that you do feel comfortable reaching out to us, there's so many options in this city, isn't there? And I was doing some reading. I'm working on a course, and I was doing some reading for the course, and this topic had come up. And some of the suggestions, and this is out of the States, some of the suggestions were when you're publicizing a ritual, that maybe you put in a byline, wheelchair accessible or things like that, so people know that, because they may self-select not to just go, just to, opt out, think, oh, that isn't for me, because you're nervous. So many things are outside, and it can be powerful to have an outside ritual, but you should be able to have an outside ritual that's also accessible.
Well, now
Yeah.
I know you don't know me, but you know Brian, and I think we've met. I recognize you. I think we have met. Feel free, and I'm sure Brian or Gwen or myself, especially because I have an enormous mouth. If you're not comfortable asking someone, calling them up or messaging them, say, "Can I do this?" You just contact one of us, and I got no problem. I'm sure no one else here.
Calling up the organizers of
Calling
the
up
event
the
and saying,
organizers, because 90% chance I'll know who's doing it, and I'll give them a ring and say, "Look, this is, you want to ask, and you're nervous too, I'll do it for you, or one of us, no
But
problem."
at the same time, as an individual who may be in that position, they shouldn't have to ask. As an organizer, it is on us.
It is. You're right.
To make our events as accessible and open to others as possible. Now, of course, we're only human. We can only do so much.
But a lot of other people do rituals as well.
Yep.
And even though certainly you're welcome to come, they may not be thinking about the terrain. So maybe that needs to be even, if it was brought up more.
Right.
Like if one of us called to look, is this, how accessible is this?
Well, I think it's really important that we have conversations like this, so we keep in mind that just because it's flat doesn't mean it's not up a hill.
It's
true.
muddy, or it's, it could be flat, but it could be muddy or rocky, like you've mentioned, Adrianna. And it's not even just wheelchairs, because, as people that have listened and followed Margot along on her journey, we have an aging population. Now, Margot's issues are not about because she's aging, but we have an aging population, and people tend to lose mobility as they get older. And things like dances, spiral dances and stuff, not always great for people with arthritis or stroke survivors or all those sorts of things.
I just want to be clear that spiral dances are not even great for a lot of able-bodied people.
Yeah, that's right.
I am not a big spiral dance person.
I do love a spiral dance, but I have almost had my shoulders pulled under their sockets because it swung too wide.
Yeah.
But I do love a spiral dance. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are things that definitely there's a wide range. And when we think about accessibility, like you were saying, mental health issues, do we have a room where if you're overstimulated or whatever, people can break out and, have a quiet place, because that can be an issue where they just need to get centered and that sort of thing. We'll have people with increasing hearing issues.
Yeah. I'm going deaf. It sucks.
It
I need to
sucks.
go get my hearing checked.
And sight issues. And I mean, Halifax is a small city, but it has a thriving community. And I wonder how many people would like the experience of a ritual that self-select to say, "Oh, that's not for me. That's not for me." Because and we don't even know to make certain things available for people. So there's a lot of thought that needs to go into it when you're offering public ritual, that a maturing community, a maturing spiritual path needs to start thinking about.
We're into the point where there's a lot of our community is now showing up with lawn chairs. It's like, I ain't doing this spiral dance.
Yeah, that's
I'm gonna sit here and watch you guys do this.
I stop and think about when I was 25 as opposed to 55.
Yeah.
It is a little different. I'm not hanging from a tree anymore. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about ritual. Can we think of other things in the community in general, or in practicing magic, where accessibility comes up?
As far as practicing magic goes, certain things like even as simple as casting a circle. If you have to be able to move a certain way and spin around in a circle in a certain specific way, that can be very difficult sitting in a chair.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody with quite a few allergies, sometimes certain things that can be used, incense and stuff like that, can cause issues. So it's sometimes difficult to find substitutes that still are appropriate for the magic you're trying to do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Magically. And again, there we're back to ritual. People with allergies,
Chemical sensitive.
multiple chemical sensitivities, uses of incense, all those sorts of things can be an issue. And people, again, self-select not to be part of things because they feel like it might be triggering to an allergy attack or something. Yeah. with allergies in your own personal practice. So it involves a lot more effort and work to find things to work with.
Yeah.
I don't know, when did we begin having like a wheelchair accessible washroom at the festivals? That was a relatively newer thing, correct?
Yeah.
But even like on that level, I don't know how much of that was a community thing and how much of that was just wheelchair accessible.
Well, Dave and I were on the executive at that time, and somebody, possibly bravely, but they reached out to the executive and said, really want to come, have come in the past. My mobility has decreased. I'm now all the time in a chair. What accommodations can we make? And we, again, a festival was outside in rough terrain and everything else. But we made certain things like the wheelchair accessible washroom, that sort of thing. And then tried to assign help, the way volunteers say, try to assign help for getting around. It was sparked not because we were prepared, but because somebody asked.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what we would have done in Mudfest.
Yeah. You see, yeah.
Lucky we could get across the field.
Yeah.
It was a crazy time.
Exactly.
Even when a venue is inside, though, for example, there's been a few that I guess have been at the Universalist
Unitarian
The
Church.
Uni Church, yeah.
And I haven't been to that location specifically myself, but for places that are holding things inside, a lot of the time they'll assume that, oh, well, we have a wheelchair ramp, and so that's good enough because we can get inside. But then we'll get inside and there will be a wheelchair accessible bathroom is not actually there, or the hallways inside won't be wide enough, the doorways won't be wide enough, or there will be certain types of rooms that they're upstairs but we don't have an elevator or things like that.
Yeah.
I can't speak specifically on that church, but I have had situations where, oh yeah, we're accessible because they have a ramp that I can get inside.
Right.
But once I'm inside, it's not an ideal situation.
Okay. I can assure you, I attend the Unitarian Church regularly, and they got everything you need. They've got bathrooms you can use. The ramp is there. We have congregation members in wheelchairs, so you're good to go.
But it is wise in one
To double check, yes.
That way for that particular venue. But I understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
That
with other venues.
with
yeah.
other venues,
Yeah.
So
and experiences.
It's interesting you bring this up because we just had a meet and greet, and we were kind of forced to move upstairs, which was not accessible anymore. If somebody with accessibility issues had arrived, we could have easily moved downstairs. But it's made me rethink using that venue in future.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't want to set up that.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to set that precedent. So the next sort of step in this conversation would be even accessibility when it comes to internet use, when it comes to posting images, using the proper alt tags for individuals who are visually impaired. Like even our podcast, one of the things I've always I lack, and I've been trying to fix for a while, is I'd always wanted to have a transcript of our podcast. Fortunately, we jibber jabber on for God knows how long.
I would not want to have to transcribe.
Right. Now there's programs and stuff that do that for you, but someone still needs to go through it and fix it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't have the time, but I need to make the time to make that happen.
Could we not take turns? Each one of us take turns being editor?
Man, I would edit a lot of our crap out.
No,
You can't do that.
No. I mean the ahs and the ohs and the ums and the could we and
We're not really supposed to, though, to a point, because it's supposed to be a transcript. You can't limit their suffering because of the listener suffering.
That's right.
But and that sort of things we need to keep in mind too when we post rituals or spells online. We got to keep in mind that there's other individuals out there who want to access this or may want to access this. We need to make it accessible to them as well.
Yes.
Is that something you have experienced up to this point? Because you said you started a lot on the internet. Have you run into any of those barriers? I know a lot of your disability is mobility issues, but
I have been fortunate enough that my hearing and sight have been okay thus far. I did just recently get glasses in case.
They look really good, by the way.
Yeah, I
You
know.
noticed.
Very glamorous. They're very that big Hollywood
Yeah.
glam.
That's
man.
what's
They look
in right now.
great.
I've been fortunate enough that I haven't needed to. I mean, I'd prefer to have captions just because of sensory processing issues rather than actual hearing problems.
I think
Me
that's.
too.
I think that's something that sort of came out of COVID a little bit.
But there is going to become a point probably where, I mean, if people are at rituals and things like that, if somebody were doing sign language interpretation would be another thing to allow people with that barrier to not have to worry about it.
We used to have someone who did that. Luna did that. She moved out west.
Yeah.
She moved out west. Yeah.
That, you know, it, and that's tricky, but I'm sure there are people in the community, if we made it
Who
if
knows
we
sign
made it a
language?
priority to search that out, and I appreciate that suggestion. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Lots to think about. If you could boil it down, what's something that's continually aggravating for you when you're dealing with us able-bodied, oblivious people?
Well, to me, the most frustrating thing is that a lot of the time it's just able-bodied people making assumptions about what's needed rather than sitting down and having this kind of conversation like we're having right now and saying, hey, what is your perspective on this and what can we do? People who aren't experiencing these types of things can only grasp so much of what it means. And poor Brian, like he was saying, that first time when I was showing up for ritual, he did the best he could, but without knowing me or experiencing life in a chair, there's only so much that he would have even recognized.
Yeah.
So getting that input of somebody who's actually disabled and saying, what can we do, is the most important, because the most aggravating thing is that nobody actually includes us for the input. It's just assumptions made based on what they think.
Very fair.
That's
Thank you.
That's a wonderful thing. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah. Thank you
Right
for
on.
sharing that. Lots to think about for people in community, I think, that may be listening. Lots for us to think about. And if I may, Dave was briefly, he had mobility issues towards the end. And one of the things I know, and if I can maybe guess or make assumptions for you, it's exhausting. It's exhausting dealing with all of these things. Just your normal life is more exhausting than an able-bodied person's life. So you're tired. And then you're tired of having to make the extra adaptations when you want to interact and be part of the community. And I can remember how exhausting it could be to go to a ritual and everything and make all those extra adaptations for them. And I think that's something else that people don't realize. Is that your experience too? Like, I don't want to assume for sure, but I know Dave.
It's exhausting for most people to get up and get a shower and eat breakfast and things in the morning. They do it without even blinking about it. They don't think, it's just autopilot. But for me, just grabbing a shower and making something to eat. Let's say we're using the spoon system. Well, I'm running out of spoons before the day's even begun.
And anything extra for your spiritual practice and getting out into community and all those extra things, even with people being in contact with you and trying to make things as easy as possible. I have to be aware that this is a real labor of love and passion for you to get out there, because it's an exhausting proposition.
It is. It's exhausting. Even just to take the bus to go to a location where there's something being held. The way that the chair gets buckled in on the bus and everything, and the bus drivers, they'll refer to me as a chair rather than a person in a chair. And having to transfer to different buses can be exhausting. I've literally, I'm sitting on the bus and they'll be like, it's at my stop and I'm like, I got to get off. So I push the button, and then people are trying to get on and a driver will be like, hold on, I got to get this chair off. rather than say, there's a lady sitting in a chair who needs help getting off. Can you wait a minute?
Oh
I'm a person.
yeah.
And they need some sort of sensitivity training with the Halifax Transit, because a lot of them, I can't say that it's all of them, but a lot of them will literally just refer to me as a chair rather than a person sitting in a chair.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
Adrianna.
Even just to take the bus, even if I can physically handle getting the chair strapped down and transferring buses a couple of different times, mentally dealing with that kind of thing where I'm not even being treated as a person, but as a chair is too much most of the time. Sometimes I go out and people will literally make noises like I'm Roadrunner and go, meet, because I guess I'm going faster than they think I should when my chair has this, 3 or 4 different speed options.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
The behaviors of other people and how they can act is exhausting. Just even so, by the time I've got to a location, it's like, thank gods that I am around some people who are attempting to accommodate and understand, because I'm dealing with morons most of the time.
Oh my goodness. No,
Well, you have such a good nature for putting up with that. I can't even imagine.
Wow. Well, we're getting close to the end here. Thank you so much, Adrianna, for being with us. It was very enlightening for me. I always want to include as much, but a couple of thoughts that I didn't think about. So that's I'm really appreciative there. And so would you like to say goodbye to everyone out there?
Thank you for having me. It would be awesome if you guys wanted to have a chat again sometime, but
Oh, we will. This will definitely happen again.
This will definitely happen again. And
yeah, have a good evening, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys again soon.
will you have a wonderful evening, and I hope everyone in your house is going to do well. And so, everyone, we're getting close to the end here. And if anyone would like to contact us, you have questions, suggestions, constructive criticism, because I personally will be ignoring you if you're rude. Like
I think everyone's been pretty great so far.
For everyone, we are very fortunate. We have wonderful, wonderful people who contact us. We've been very, very fortunate. So you can certainly contact us through our Facebook page.
3 Witches and a Druid podcast would like to take a moment to shout out to our amazing Patreon supporters from all around the world. Without your generous contributions, now and over the past 2 seasons, we could not bring you this magical content, and we thank you once again for listening.
And until next time, everybody, merry meet.
Merry part.
And merry meet again. Blessed be.
This has been 3 Witches and a Druid podcast. Thanks for listening.